faithfully sharing value and interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. In today's society, one voice stands out loud and clear: living for yourself. Everyone has a strong desire to live life on their own terms. The rise of this idea is called the individualization of society. Our current society is also called an individualized society, where being able to live for yourself seems like a lucky thing. In traditional hierarchical societies, people were rigidly divided into classes, with strict rules from clothing and food to careers, leaving no choice at all. Even in modern times, not everyone could live for themselves. Women were often confined as mothers and wives, serving the family. So, being able to live for yourself and control your own destiny seems like progress. However, from another angle, this seems like a selfish society where everyone only cares for themselves, neglecting others, social stability, and communities. For example, families, churches, and unions are crumbling. People no longer care about public issues, only individual futures. Traditional values like unity, dedication, and mutual help are fading away. Cultural concepts and social orders built over centuries are being destroyed. So, is an individualized society ultimately good or bad? What causes society to show this trend of individualization? Living in such a society, can we still hope for a life that keeps personal independence while being united and caring? Today, we're introducing a book that tries to answer these questions. Its name is Individualization. The authors are two German sociologists, also a married couple. The husband, Ulrich Beck, was one of the most influential thinkers in contemporary Western sociology. Beck, a sociology professor at the University of Munich and the London School of Economics, proposed theories like risk society and second modernity with global impact. The wife, Elizabeth Beck-Gernsheim, is also a sociology professor at the University of Munich, focusing on social changes in family systems, especially women's lives and intimate relationships in modern society. Or, ON, the book Individualization was published in 2002 and quickly translated into multiple languages, with the Chinese edition released in 2011. And next, we'll explore this book through three key questions. What's the first question? It's about what individualization means and how an individualized society emerges. The second question, what changes occur in people's lives within an individualized society? The third question, can public spirit still be cultivated in an individualized society? First, let's examine the initial question. What is individualization? How does an individualized society come into being?
It's crucial to clarify that individualization isn't individualism, nor does it equate to mere personality or nonconformity.
Individualization represents a transformative trend where people progressively detach from social communities like national classes, family clans, etc., becoming society's dominant developmental pattern. Well, previously, individuals were deeply embedded in these communities. Their detachment through individualization results from societal structures, not personal choice. The individualized society discussed here primarily refers to developed capitalist nations, particularly in Western Europe. Three key factors shape individualized societies: the intellectual legacy of classical individualism, free labor mobility, and the rise of welfare states. First, classical individualism. Individualization isn't unique to modern society, but permeates European history, essentially expressing Western heritage dating to Christianity's emergence. This was medieval feudal states were built on tribes and families, while the Christian church placed greater emphasis on the individual. Christian theology consistently asserts human equality before God, who governs souls, while the church manages and saves each individual soul. Thus, the individual became the fundamental unit of legal governance. Family, tribe, and social class ceased being primary units of responsibility and obedience. During the Renaissance and Enlightenment, individuals were further liberated from theology and church authority. For instance, dramatic romantic love came to dominate personal life experiences. individual emotions, and social morality. The tension between personal freedom and public duty spawned profoundly moving literary works. In this process, personalized love replaces responsibility and obligation, gradually becoming the driving force behind couples' unions. The second key factor in the individualization process is the liberalization of the labor market. Strictly speaking, the entire history of capitalist development has been dedicated to promoting the free flow of labor. The authors point out that once people enter the labor market, they are constantly released from traditional bonds like family and neighborhood.
In a free labor market, individual income is tied to personal ability and performance, to the point where even fixed labor organizations may cease to exist.
For example, driven by globalization and the internet, more and more people are choosing flexible employment. Well, the characteristic of this kind of work is its flexibility.
With part-time jobs and short-term contracts, people can engage in different types of work simultaneously. This flexible employment model is rapidly rising not just in developed countries, but globally.
The youth we admire today mostly fall under flexible employment. However, it must be pointed out that for a long period in human history, individualization did not become the mainstream process in traditional societies. Even as individuals are constantly liberated from certain forms of groups, they are constantly re-embedded into other groups. For example, individuals who left tribes and families turned to the church. And as the church declined with industrialization and nationalization processes, people re-embedded into groups like nations, classes, politics, and parties. Moreover, no matter how society changes, family has always been the most important and stable group. So, when did individualization become the most significant social trend? And under this trend, individuals did not re-embed into other social groups. Therefore, we need to discuss another context, the rise of the welfare state. The authors point out in the book that the 1960s were a crucial watershed. After World War II, Western societies experienced reconstruction and then entered a phase of comprehensive prosperity. European countries established welfare state systems known as comprehensive social security from cradle to grave. For example, in many Nordic countries, when having a child, the state provides subsidies. From birth to age 16, there are annual allowances. Education and medicine are free. Even after death, funeral expenses are covered by the state. Logically, such high welfare states should make individuals more attached to the nation. However, reality is quite the opposite. In fact, it's precisely because the state provides comprehensive security that individuals further detach from various organizations. And in this sense, individualization results from social institutional arrangements, not individual will. So specifically, what institutional arrangements in high welfare states paved the way for societal individualization? The authors point out that political democratization and educational expansion are the two most important factors. First is the high degree of political democracy. With the advancement of civil rights movements, disadvantaged groups like people of color, women, and immigrants gradually gained equal political rights. The authors write that democratic principles are becoming the organizing principles of daily life and relationships, the foundation of how society operates. People pursue equality and trust, believing in dialogue rather than violence.
When democratic consciousness extends to all life aspects, it naturally fosters cultural equality, cultural democratization, meaning respecting each person's life choices and individual rights.
Thus, it's understandable that contemporary society shows diverse and personalized lifestyles. Second is educational expansion. One of the welfare state's most important contributions is providing equal educational opportunities. More people receiving education means not only enhanced individual capabilities, but also the ability to break through class and family constraints through personal effort, gaining upward mobility.
More importantly, increased educational access for women profoundly transformed their self-perception and life attitudes.
Until the late 19th century, European girls had almost no access to education. Lower-class girls might learn basic reading, writing, and arithmetic as essential survival skills. Middle-class girls typically studied arts to gain advantages in the marriage market. Middle-class, artistically knowledgeable women were viewed as better at managing households, serving husbands, and raising children. This situation changed in the late 19th century as girls gradually gained access to higher education and vocational systems. Well, by the 1960s, women's educational years increased steadily. Highly educated women grew in number, and gender differences in learning content significantly diminished. And why does educational expansion drive individualization? Because under educational equality, the system values individual performance, each person's achievements, over family background, ethnicity, or even gender. Thus, since the 1960s, core social institutions, including basic political and social rights, and the labor market, education, and mobility needed to sustain them, all prioritize individual over collective welfare. And from labor security to parenting education and retirement, all safeguard individual choices, revealing a new characteristic of free individualization. This is something only a minority once aspired to. For example, living for oneself has now become a demand for more people, even everyone. Next, we'll address the second question. What changes have occurred in people's lives in an individualized society, or what consequences has it brought? The first consequence: standardized lives have become lives of choice. The second consequence: risks and responsibilities have been individualized. First, let's examine the major change: standardized lives transforming into lives of choice. When everyone expects to arrange life by their own will, traditional rhythms and social orders gradually break down. Life stages once followed rigid paths, like study at 15, establish at 30, now replaced by lifelong learning, career changes anytime, and 50 is still young. Regarding social order, the traditional norm was men handle outside affairs, women manage home. Now both women and men excel in their careers. More advocate for men sharing housework and childcare, even men manage home, women handle outside becomes acceptable. While tradition said better destroy 10 temples than break one marriage, today people agree unhappy marriages should end early. Quality over longevity matters. Often, both marriage and divorce are seen as joyous, unthinkable traditionally. Living for oneself impacts society inevitably. Using marital changes as an example, what does this life of choice mean for society? In traditional society, the family was essentially a community of necessity. Within a family, men and women, old and young, all had defined roles and tasks. Everyone's activities coordinated with others, serving the common goal of maintaining farm or workshop operations. Family members accumulated similar life and production experiences, facing similar pressures and risks, seasonal changes, weather shifts. The family was a tightly knit production unit where mutual aid left little space for personal hobbies or emotions. So, what should men and women do? What shouldn't they do? These were predetermined. The dense social network of family and village communities rejected any deviation from norms. Marriage was an internalized natural law, sanctified by divine and church authority. Marriage existed not for individual happiness, but as a means for human continuity. Western society long sang hymns to the family, universally acknowledging it as life's essential pattern. But by the late 1960s to early 1970s, our so-called individualized society, student and feminist movements erupted in fierce rebellion. Against traditional family-centered structures, families transformed from communities of necessity to selective, intimate relationships. As noted earlier, welfare states' social security mechanisms provided material aid and benefits, creating greater social equity. This high welfare system inadvertently led to reduced family dependence, even with poor labor market performance. It ensured individuals could achieve basic livelihoods without family reliance from the outset. And thus, family increasingly became a relationship of choice. Whether to form a family and with whom became matters of personal selection. Even within families, individuals integrated personal interests and plans into domestic life. So, consequently, families must exert significant effort to reconcile divergent life trajectories. Take daily family life. Men work, and women do too. Children attend school and various extracurricular activities. Family life now scatters across locations rather than centering in one place, lacking synchronized rhythms. And family structures are shaped by social institutions. Kindergarten schedules, work hours, store openings, transit timetables, requiring negotiation skills from all members. As a selective intimate relationship, family naturally becomes more prone to rupture. A study shows that in Germany, children born in 1980 faced 3 times the risk of parental divorce compared to those born in 1960. After parents divorce and remarry, the entire family structure and its members change accordingly. Like for grandparents, because their child got divorced, they may find it harder to see their grandchildren. And this change in relationships isn't necessarily what the elderly wanted. For children, the situation is the same. Due to parental divorce or remarriage, they need to remove someone familiar from their lives or accept a new face. In a family, each person must choose who they truly consider family. Internal relationships shift from being taken for granted to being selective. Thus, as individualization deepens, individuals must define their own identities, make their own living, create their own lives, and arrange their lives within relationships. Take family life. In an individualized context, there are no longer set obligations or model relationships to follow. Everything must be explored and chosen by those involved. The authors note that today's smart individuals aren't defined by knowledge, but by their ability to handle messy, contradictory information and make quick decisions. The second major consequence of an individualized society is that risks and responsibilities have been individualized. And so, living for yourself means not only pursuing your dreams, but also bearing the pain of failure. But in reality, individual failure is often closely tied to broader societal issues. However, under individualistic thinking, this connection gets hidden. The result is a phenomenon of social crisis. For example, structural unemployment risks shift to individuals, turning social problems into personal psychological issues. Anxiety, neurosis, deviance, and loss of agency among members are seen as individual problems rather than societal ones. Take unemployment. In an individualized society, it's often seen as a personal capability issue, but it's likely tied to imbalances in social distribution structures. The book points out that in the 1990s, workers' income increased by 2%, while capital owners saw a 59% increase. Capital can grow without labor, a truly shocking fact. Yet this remains largely unknown. Moreover, growing segments of society suffer from poverty and unemployment. From the 1980s to 1990s, global economic output rose from $4 to $23 trillion, yet poverty increased by 20%. Between the 1960s to 90s, the poorest fifth's share of global income fell from 4% to 1%. Theoretically, social inequality intensifies while poverty persists. But why are there so few collective protests against poverty and unemployment today? This is because poverty and unemployment have been individualized. Economist Schumpeter's classic metaphor, today's society is like a bus full of unemployed. Few have fixed seats, most stand, many exit after stops while others board. Those inside don't form strong social bonds. They board thinking they can always exit and constantly see others getting off. Thus, new unemployment and poverty aren't fixed to classes but diffuse across society. Even the middle class faces unemployment. Poverty becomes temporary and fragmented. This makes statistical measurement extremely difficult, often leading to underestimated severity. Long-term, poverty will increase while individualization prevents political organization among the poor. The authors note, absence of inequality protests doesn't mean more equality. It likely means more inequality that's simply gone unnoticed. In individualized societies, people strive to live for themselves, yet the world doesn't conform to individual wills. Some life risks and crises can be anticipated or controlled individually, but many cannot. Further individualization of risk and responsibility creates two scenarios. First scenario, individuals must constantly strive in life like running on a treadmill. Take health. Traditional health meant absence of illness, while modern health means perpetual vitality and anti-aging. Hence, nutrition experts emerge, vitamins and fitness classes becoming coveted modern lifestyles. Second scenario. In this constant effort, people easily fall into emptiness. As life paths become fluid and ambiguous, self-doubt easily creeps in. Without reliable beliefs to reference, people constantly question, am I truly happy? Am I truly satisfied? Am I truly satisfied? During life's setbacks, despair becomes more likely. Such doubts and despair fuel modern industries like psychotherapy. More freedom brings seemingly more troubles and threats. If the past suffered lack of choice, today's problem is too many choices. In this situation, some even want to abandon freedom and return to authority. Thus, we see religions regaining appeal and fundamentalism growing louder. By now, you should understand the causes and characteristics of individualized society. As initially stated, this era champions individual self-realization. Under this ethos, personal choice expands infinitely while freedom gets fully guaranteed. Yet the consequence is growing atomization and lack of public life experience. Therefore, the book's final section explores what happens next in this trend. Can individualized societies still cultivate public spirit? The Becks remain optimistic. Individualization won't prevent public spirit, but requires collective exploration. First, outdated class or political notions assume overcoming individualization is necessary for collective identity.
The Becks believe this is utterly mistaken.
Conversely, we must recognize individuals as the foundation of democratic or republican systems and the basic units of all political organizations. We must vigorously protect individual freedom, achieving democracy not just through parliaments but within smaller social units. For example, organizing locally and communally around citizens' daily lives to build self-responsible, proactive civil societies. Secondly, evidence shows growth in individual spirit doesn't impede group consciousness formation. For instance, studies by American sociologists of religions show 75% of Americans still value unity, helping others, and public welfare as much as self-realization and freedom. Thus, self-care and caring for others aren't contradictory. Highly individualized societies actually require social sensitivity, cooperation, and responsibility to maintain daily life. And like typical family dynamics, grandpa meets friends, grandma dances in squares, parents work, kids attend kindergarten, each has individual lives, yet belongs to a collective. This collective life depends on constant communication and compromise among members. Therefore, we shouldn't say families are collapsing, but that they've acquired a new historical form. Finally, the authors advocate cooperative individualism. Everyone has the right to live for themselves while coexisting collectively. Thus, social life requires renegotiating coexistence rules. Taking intimate families, you want support for your development, but must reciprocate when supported. Moreover, you must acknowledge others' freedom and need for care, creating a dilemma. You can't restrict loved ones' freedom, but you still want their love. If their love stems from your demands or coercion, it restricts their freedom. Thus, we all desire genuine, heartfelt love, freely chosen by the other. Therefore, only by jointly exploring a new ethic valuing both individuality and obligation can we resolve the love-freedom dilemma. The authors note this is a new life ethic. Everyone must continuously learn to coexist with others, balancing autonomy and interdependence, like growing children. In the book's closing, the Becks write profoundly. Societies form not merely through obeying leaders or laws. Society exists only when people share perspectives, agree on issues, and resonate similarly toward facts. All right, that concludes our introduction to individualization. Let's recap. We live in an individualized society where national classes, ethnic groups, and traditional family structures decline, while self-realization dominates modern life, Choices shape individuals as authors of their existence. This defines our era's most crucial characteristic. Three social forces drive individualization: classical individualism's legacy, free labor mobility, and welfare state emergence. Individualized societies yield two major consequences: standardized lives transformed into lives of choice. Second consequence: risks and responsibilities become individualized. Thus, modern people enjoy life-choosing freedom, yet often suffer from excessive options and liberty. While encouraging freedom, individualized societies don't necessarily mean public spirit's demise. The authors advocate cooperative individualism. Humanity must co-create ethics honoring both freedom and obligation. Well, that's individualization. That concludes our book interpretation. Find notes below the audio. See you next time.